Hi, my name is Benjamin Carp, and I'm the author of a brand new book from Yale University Press, The Great New York Fire of 1776, A Lost Story of the American Revolution. Moving some books today. I figure I'll wear a casual outfit for the casual reader. I'm going to read a little bit to you from the introduction and see if it whets your appetite to buy the book. New York City was the most important spot on the map in 1776. The British thought it was vital to retake it, and the American rebels strained to defend it. General William Howe drove the rebels from Staten Island, Long Island, and Lower Manhattan with the help of one of the largest amphibious assault forces in history up to that time. The British hoped that a decisive victory in New York would end the rebellion. Then, 6 days after the British took New York City, more than a fifth of it burned to the ground on September 21st. The fire crippled a city that was the focal point of the 1776 campaign just weeks after the United States declared its independence. This was New York City's first great fire. In the summer of 1776, the rebels rapidly came to understand that they could not successfully defend New York without losing a significant portion of their fighting force. They evacuated the city, and they did not quite leave it intact. As the fire raged, almost everyone at the scene believed that the rebels had lit the spark deliberately. The incendiaries may have begun with specific targets, but the fire quickly became indiscriminate, destroying the homes of friends as well as foes. The British troops and their loyalist supporters reacted to the fire with horror. British soldiers and sailors executed a few suspected incendiaries on the spot. Outside the city, Americans weren't sure what to think. For months before the fire, many people had predicted that New York City was doomed because it was too important to British success, but too difficult for the rebels to defend. The rumors sounded certain that the rebels would sooner burn New York than leave it for the British. When the Redcoats arrived on September 15th, they found combustible materials, which they assumed had been prepared to set fire to the city. That day, the troops extinguished a small blaze and found a trail of gunpowder leading away from it. John Baltus Dash, the fire chief, buried his valuables to keep them safe from a conflagration he knew was coming, and he wasn't the only one. But who had set the Great Fire of 1776, and why? Were they mischief makers with no political motivation? The British soldiers or sailors themselves? Civilians who supported the rebellion? Saboteurs with orders from the Continental Army? The fire appears to have been the intentional work of perpetrators with political motivations, the more radical elements of the rebel coalition. Witnesses spoke of the fire being set by white men from across the Northeast, along with women and at least one mixed-race man. They acted either of their own volition or under orders from a commanding officer. Perhaps George Washington himself gave the command. But even if the fire was an accident, as the rebels claimed, the Great Fire of 1776 reveals the mayhem and instability that accompanied the creation of the United States. It was a noteworthy disaster, followed by a handful of misguided murders. The fire reveals the volatile conditions of New York City and the hundreds of people who were displaced by having their homes reduced to ash. Crowding plagued the city's British garrison for the rest of the war. New Yorkers, both renters and property owners, complained about the lasting displacement and loss that they had suffered. They lived in fear of new fire scares. This book seeks to resolve the conflicting stories about the Great Fire of New York. The Great Fire challenges and changes the story of 76 to reflect the chaos and uncertainty that people experienced on the ground. It expands the story to include ordinary sailors and civilians from a variety of backgrounds, as well as rebels, loyalists, and those in between. It shows the rumors and lies that people told themselves amid the carnage and wreckage that the war had wrought. The American cause looks very different if we acknowledge some of its most unsavory features. And it looks very different if we put New York City at the center of the revolution, because New York's story was one of civil violence, fire, and military occupation. In the wake of the Revolutionary War, New York City emerged as an immortal metropolis years before it surpassed Philadelphia's population and decades before it became one of the world's largest and most influential cities. New York had risen from the ashes, but only by forgetting the flames of war. So I hope you'll take an interest in this book, and I look forward to meeting you out on the Book Talk Trail.